Hey there, this is Frank with Electric Wheelchair Parts. I want to share with you some insight on electric motors and gearboxes. This one here is a pretty typical electric wheelchair motor. There's obviously two of these, and some of what I'm going to say applies to scooters as well, especially concerning the brake part and the motor part. So anyway, on occasion there'll be a fault code that comes up in your computer, or minus the fault code, you'll find that you're driving around in a circle. This doesn't happen that often at all, but when it does, if you're driving around in a circle in a wheelchair, that usually means that your gear engage lever on one side or the other is disengaged. That's the only thing that the computer in your wheelchair doesn't really read, is that engage lever and disengage lever. On some it does, but on most it doesn't. So everything will seem like it's fine, but you're going around in circles. So I would check that lever if that's the case. But in more serious situations, you're going to get usually a fault code, and the fault code is usually 3 or 4 flashing lights, and that's either left or right side on your wheelchair, either motor or brake, or sometimes the fault code doesn't really distinguish between motor and the brake. But just so you understand, the computer receives a signal. It reads the ohms coming from the motor, making sure that that's normal, and if it's off, then it goes, hey, there's something wrong, we probably shouldn't be driving, and it shuts it down. Same thing with the brake. If you're having brake problem, your computer will read the ohms and go, oh, well, the ohms are off, we might have to shut this thing down for safety's sake. That's how they're engineered. So if in fact you're having a side problem, you need to now determine whether or not it is a motor or a brake or your gearbox. I mean, if you're getting a crunchy sound, it sounds horrible, and it's a little loosey-goosey and it wobbles or whatever, you probably have a bad gearbox or a bad bearing right here in the axle bearing. That's pretty common as far as motor problems. The other motor problem that you might have, if you had your chair for a real long time, or you've been using the heck out of it, and it just shuts down for some reason, it could be the motor brush. And the motor brushes are located in these little caps here, those motor brush holders, and this one in particular looks like this. They all pretty much look like that. Okay, they have a spring on them, more or less. This is what they look like. This one here is pretty good. I would say it's about 4/5, so it's good. But what you don't want is for this carbon brush. This is what connects to the I forget what it's called, but this is what makes contact. So if it grinds all the way down, I mean, it takes a long time, but if it grinds all the way down to the spring, and you're like on metal, because there's metal inside the motor, you're gonna, it's not gonna make a good contact, for one. For two, it's gonna wreck your motor. So that's a huge problem, and hopefully you don't have that problem, because you probably already wrecked your motor by the time it's already ground down. You figure you had a problem. So that's one thing. The other thing is what I said it could possibly be is the brake in the unit. And now these brakes are electromagnetic, so and their position, their default position is on. It's normally on. So like when it's sitting at rest, your brakes are on. And only when power is put to your brake, then the brake releases, and then it allows your motor to spin freely. Okay, when these go bad, you're gonna have some. Usually, you're gonna have some symptoms like you're gonna feel a drag, or you're gonna you're going to probably have some symptoms before it just goes dead. That's just my opinion. But you can replace these, just the brakes, sometimes, especially this kind. We have a bunch, but like I said, it's not usually a problem. But when you have a problem with the motor, it's usually either the motor or the brake. And if it's not the brushes being ground down and nothing, and it's not the brake, then you know you have a really old machine and you've used it a lot and you kept up your brushes and your windings are going soft, and you know, rather than get your copper windings inside rewound, I would just suggest trying to find another motor instead, because that's going to be cost inefficient. But anyway, I would say that's pretty much, I don't know, that's the basics. You know, if it's not this easy part, the brush, or if it's not the brake and it's not the gearbox, then you know, it's probably the windings in your motor, and just don't even worry about that. Just don't try to fix that. Just replace it, because that's not going to be cost efficient for you. But anyway, I hope this explained a little bit about you know, the problems that you can have with the motors and the brakes. And if you have any questions or anything, please give me a call, write me a message, and all the information's down below. So like I said, I appreciate you watching, and have a good day.